Hi, hello, my name is Didier. I'm a technical support engineer for in the end-user computing area for VMware, and today I'm going to cover a top issue we see in support with VMware Horizon View and also with VMware Mirage. So let's get started. Okay, so on the agenda today we will have first a quick overview on the Horizon 6 architecture. Then we will move to things to avoid when using View, the recommendation, and also Horizon View upgrade, some tips that I can share with you, and also the SSL configuration. After that we will move to the VMware Mirage top issue regarding the storage and upload policy, and then the installation, database, Mirage Client connectivity issue, centralization, reference machine, OS migration, base layer, operation and restore, and then how to collect the Sysreport when you need to contact VMware support. Okay, so regarding Horizon View, the architecture is very similar to the old version. We now support a remote desktop session host on Windows Server 2012, and also the remote app. We see here that we have the View security server. So if you want to access your desktop without a VPN connection, that's the component that you will need to install. You also see that we have the vSphere, the vCenter, basically to manage all your VM, your VDI infra. You will have also the View Composer, which will basically create your desktop on demand with a link clone, which is just rather than a complete full desktop, it will generate a desktop on demand and just use a small footprint for your desktop. We see also all the different clients that you can use to access your View desktop. So from the iPad, iPhone, HTML access also, or any regular View client that you can find on any Windows machine, Mac. And that's about it for the infra. Yeah, we now also support Windows Server 2012 for the infra. So things to avoid when using View. Because View is just an additional layer on top of vCenter and ESXi, we recommend, you must avoid editing any VM directly from ESXi or from vCenter, because View will do it for you. So if you need to remove a VM, you should do it from View admin. If you do it from vCenter, View won't be aware of those changes, and then you will have problems such as difficulties to remove VM. They will be stuck in a deleting state. You won't be able to reprovision or recompose your VM either. So you will have different issues. If you do any of the above, then we have KB, where you can manually delete those VM from the View Composer database and from Adam instance. But yeah, the best is just basically avoid editing those VM directly from vCenter or vSphere. Another thing that you need to avoid or when you use View is to make sure that you disable the automatic upgrade of the VMware tools, because for View, when you access your desktop using PCOIP, we install a dedicated specific VGA driver for the PCOIP protocol. So we install that driver when we install the View agent. If you install the VMware tools after, or if you upgrade the VMware tools after, you will basically just override that VGA driver, and you won't be able to access the View desktop using PCOIP protocol. So you will most of the time see just a black screen. Another reason for the black screen is when you the UDP port required for PCOIP is being blocked by any firewall. Could be on the client, could be on any firewall between the View desktop and the client. So you need to make sure that you can access the view desktop or the security server, connection server using UDP and TCP protocol. So regarding the recommendation for link clone, we highly recommend to optimize the desktop just to reduce the IOPS required for your linked clone. So we have a guide where we document everything. So you will basically see some optimization, such as disabling some Windows services that you don't need, disabling Windows Update, because you will usually do the update on your master image and then recompose your pool, so you don't need to have Windows Update running on your link clone. You will also need to disable defrag, because there is no need for defragmentation on those virtual desktops. You will also need to disable visual effects such as optimize, or choose the optimize for best performance, so that when you move the windows around, it will just be more optimized for the connection, as you won't see the content when moving the windows around. You will find a complete list of optimization and even script that will do those optimizations for you in the optimization guide for Windows 7 and Windows 8. You can also find a tool on the VMware Labs where the tools will do those optimizations for you. If you remember that if you use persona management, you need to make sure that you keep some services running. They are documented in the optimization guide, so make sure that you don't disable those services. And you will see that we have a separate script if you use persona management. Regarding PCOIP optimization, you have loads of different GPO that you can use for the PCOIP. So usually we recommend to make sure that you give a very high importance for the traffic used by PCOIP. So it's usually between, you should give a higher priority to PCOIP traffic than regular TCP traffic, but lower than voice over IP traffic. Yeah, we have also a guide that provides a recommendation on the PCOIP network optimization. So they will explain how to implement quality of service for PCOIP. Yeah, and that's about it. For the master image update, we recommend before you take the snapshot and recompose your pool, you need to make sure that you always clear the DNS cache and release the IP address, because you will use the same master image for all your link clones, so you don't need the DNS cache or the IP address, because it will pick up a new IP address when you power on those VM. So the other recommendation is always test the new snapshot. So sometimes we see customers, they update the master image, take a new snapshot, and they go live in production with that new snapshot. So you always need to test that specific snapshot on a test pool, make sure that everything is working. If you have power users, assign that new snapshot to a few users just to make sure that everything is working fine, and always keep the old version of the snapshot. In case there is anything wrong that doesn't work, you can revert back to the old snapshot. Regarding the Horizon View upgrade, before you do any upgrade, make sure that all components of View are compatible with all ESXi and vCenter components. So you can find that information in the interoperability guide. So you will be able to select in a drop-down menu the Horizon View, the version you want to use or to upgrade to, and then select the vCenter and the ESXi host, and just make sure that you see the checkbox which says that it's compatible. You also need, if you use Zero Client or Thin Client, make sure that they support the latest version of Horizon View. We see very often customer upgrading View, and then the Zero Client or the Thin Client is not compatible with the latest version of View. So you can also find that information in the VMware HCL, and you can just type the name of your Thin Client or Zero Client model and brand, and then you will see whether or not it's compatible with the latest version. For the Horizon View upgrade, you also need to make sure that you upgrade all the components in the correct order. We have a guide for each version of Vue that document the exact steps how to upgrade your Vue environment. Make sure you read the guide, it's your best friend. It contains around 60 pages, so everything is documented. I would definitely recommend you to read the guide before you do the upgrade. Before you do the upgrade, make sure also that you back up your Vue Composer database and your Adam instance. The best is also to stop any composing operation or any refresh OS disk on logoff, so that when you do the backup, the information contained in the Vue Composer database and the Adam instance basically contain the same information. Otherwise, you will have a problem, because if you do the upgrade on your Vue Composer and you don't back up the information at the same time, you will see that it basically doesn't contain the same information. So they need to be consistent. For the SSL configuration for Vue, you need to make sure that the private key is exportable. So when you configure your own SSL certificate, you just need to open the MMC and show the certificate on your connection server. You just need to double click on your certificate, and then you will see from there whether or not the private key is exportable. If it's not exportable, it won't work with you. It's a requirement. The private key has to be exportable. The friendly name also needs to be set to VDM. It won't work if the friendly name is not set or configured, or if you have a different name. When creating the certificate, you also need to make sure that you select the Windows Server 2003 template. It's not compatible with 2008 template. If your client, whether it's a Windows client, a Thin client, Zero client, is not part of any domain or doesn't have the trusted certificate, you need to make sure that you import that certificate also on your client, just to make sure that the SSL certificate is trusted on that machine. So we will now move to the VMware Mirage part. So I will first cover issue we see regarding the storage and upload policy before I talk about the installation, because very often we see issue where the storage is working fine with a few CVD, but then if you decide to move with more CVD, the storage will basically be overloaded and won't be able to handle all the IOPS. So you need to be aware of the amount of IOPS required for Mirage. It's around 1.2, 1.5 IOPS for incremental upload, which is called steady state upload in Mirage. If it's the first centralization, you need around 100, 150 IOPS per CVD for Mirage. So if you decide to do any migration, any base layer assignment, any initial centralization, you need to make sure that your storage will be able to handle at least 200, 150 IOPS. Disable the antivirus on the storage array, because otherwise you can have an issue. Usually the antivirus will be done on the client, so you don't need to scan the same data on your storage array. We also recommend to create large Mirage volume, because the deduplication mechanism doesn't work across volume. So if you have multiple small volume, basically you won't be able to use all the deduplication features. We also recommend to always test Mirage on a few endpoints. So you will need to first centralize a few endpoints, basically test with a few users that belongs to different departments. Let the Mirage takes the backup running for a few weeks, and then you can run a report that will show you all the files that have been uploaded to the Mirage server. So basically, if you see that your storage is running out of space, you should run that report. You will have a CSV file where you can export and use Excel to open that file and basically sort the file by size and see all the files that you don't need to backup. If you don't need to backup them, just modify the upload policy to exclude them from the backup. For the upload policy, you don't need to manually exclude any Windows system file in the upload policy. We already have default rule for that, so you don't need to do that. You can also verify if your volume is compatible running the NAS compatibility test tool. We will run a few tests against the storage just to make sure that it's compatible. You should also never delete or move any file manually on the Mirage volume. Everything should be done from the Mirage management console. So there is no need to go to the Mirage volume and manually browse the file and delete them, because you will have just trouble. Regarding the installation, we have a few components for the Mirage gateway. For the Mirage infra, you have now the Mirage gateway, which allows you to connect to the Mirage component from internet, so you don't need to be, users don't need to be located on the internal network. You can basically perform a backup from internet also. We have depending the size of your Mirage environment, you can implement load balancing and have multiple Mirage servers. You can have also the database on a different server. You can have the Mirage management server on a different server also. So you can either install everything on the same box for a very, very small environment, or install everything on different servers for a large-scale deployment. Regarding the installation, you need to make sure that you create a new group in Active Directory and make sure that the user account that you will be using to install Mirage is part of that group. That group is only there to have a Mirage admin. So you can have multiple Mirage admins, and it's a requirement to create that group before you install the server. The Mirage users that will, the user that will be used to install Mirage need to have DB creator privileges on the database, because Mirage will basically create the database during the setup. So you need to have that privileges on the SQL server. During the setup, you will also see that you have multiple instances of SQL. So depending which version of SQL server you use, you need to make sure that you provide the correct one. So if you use SQL Express, the instance name is SQL Express. If it's SQL Standard, it's empty. And if it's SQL Enterprise, it's MS SQL. So that's also important. So regarding the database, once the server, management server has been installed, the database for Mirage has been created, you need to make sure that you will set the recovery model to simple, or you need to make sure that you run backup, because Mirage will, otherwise your database will run out of space. So if you set the recovery model to simple, you won't have those issues. Mirage usually uses between 1 and 2 megabytes of storage space on your database per CVD. If you don't set the recovery model to simple, make sure that you run backup, so that it will shrink the database every time you run the backup. If you face any issue regarding the Mirage client connectivity, you also need to verify a few things. So of course the DNS resolution needs to be working fine, so you need to verify the name resolution. You need to make sure that the SSL configuration is configured the same way on the Mirage server and on the Mirage client. If you have the SSL configured for your Mirage server and the client is not configured to use SSL, the Mirage client won't be able to connect to the server. So make sure that you have the same configuration on each side. The port configuration needs also to be checked. By default, we use port 8000. You can define a different port, so if you change the port on the Mirage server, you need to make sure that the port on the client is configured to use the same port. Another thing that you can check for large-scale deployment, if you have configured load balancer and the Mirage client cannot connect to the Mirage server, what you can do is you can bypass the load balancer just as a test. So you can just open the Mirage client and change the address and make sure that you will basically connect to the Mirage server directly rather than the Mirage, the load balancer that you have configured. You can also have issue where the Mirage client cannot connect to the Mirage server if the device has been rejected from the Mirage console. You also need to make sure that the Mirage client is not running a newer version than the server. So the Mirage server always needs to be running the latest version. The Mirage client will be automatically upgraded, so you don't need to worry about how to upgrade the client. WMI issue, if you have any WMI issue on your Windows machine, sometimes it will prevent the client to connect to the Mirage server, because we basically check the BIOS ID to make sure that we can provide that information to the server to uniquely identify those clients. So if you have any WMI issue, we won't be able to get that information from the Mirage client. Regarding centralization issue, you need to make sure that the antivirus is configured properly. If you have any antivirus running on the Mirage client, you need to make sure that you exclude all of them, all the Mirage components, so the Mirage services, the 1-over volume information, which contains all the temporary files that we use to update the base layer or assign any app layer. So the 1-over volume information needs to be excluded from any antivirus scan. On the server, you also need to exclude the 1-over management service and the 1-over server service. If you have any problem to centralize your endpoint, we always recommend to use the default upload policy. So if you have modified the upload policy for any reason, such as removing any Windows component from centralization, you need to make sure that you test with the default upload policy. If you have multiple Mirage server, you need to make sure also that all Mirage volume are configured on a shared storage. You cannot use local storage if you use Mirage in a cluster environment. Regarding the reference machine, we also always recommend to use a VM as a reference machine to make sure that you won't have any issue with the driver. So when you use the VM as a reference machine, you should not install the VMware tools. You should only basically install a regular VM without the VMware tools, install all the application you need, and then create a base layer, first a reference machine and then a base layer. You can then create a driver library in Mirage, which will contain all the drivers that you need for your physical machine, and then you will assign that base layer to all the endpoints. Before capturing the base layer, you need to make sure that the reference machine is part of a domain, Windows domain, and you need to make sure that the trust is not broken. So if the trust between the Windows domain and the client is broken, then you will have problem when you will deploy that base layer to all the clients. If you use a VM as we recommend, you need to make sure that when you revert the snapshot, it will take time for Windows to synchronize the time again with the domain. So you need to make sure that you give at least some times just to make sure that the client will basically synchronize the time and before you do the capture of the base layer. So regarding the OS migration, base layer operation and restore, we see also some issues. So regarding the driver library, as I said before, you need to make sure that you upload all the driver you need and make sure that you don't use any third-party tools to collect the driver. You need to use dedicated driver that can be used for deployment. So usually OEM partners will provide those drivers. Those drivers are specifically made for deployment. You cannot use regular driver. It will work in 90% of the case, but it won't work for all drivers. So make sure that you use those drivers. If you have any third-party application that you wish to migrate, or the settings that you wish to migrate for third-party application, you need to make sure that those application settings can be migrated with USMT. So you can verify this on the TechNet article that I provide here. If those settings are not compatible, are not supported by USMT, you can always create custom XML file that will define where the settings are located on the client and which settings should be migrated over to the new OS if they are located in a different location. When using encryption software, you need to make sure that the source machine and the target machine always have the same state. So if the source machine is encrypted, you need to make sure that the target machine where you will deploy the base layer or do a restore is running in the same state. You cannot have a machine which is encrypted and then the target machine which is not encrypted. And then if you have any problem, you can open a support request via VMware support. And if you need to collect the Sysreport and provide the logs to the VMware support, this is how you generate them. So from the client, it's very easy. You just need to go to the notification area, right-click on the Mirage Client, and generate the full Sysreport. And then you can provide that full Sysreport to VMware support. If you want to generate those logs remotely without accessing the Mirage Client, you can do it from the Mirage console also. You need to make sure that the client, the account used to run the Mirage service can access that share. So make sure that the share has the correct permission so that Mirage Client can upload the logs to the share directly. Thank you very much.